Hey, everybody. Rest in peace to the woman that was murdered by ICE officers. Yet you have motherfuckers online saying she deserved it. She shouldn't have been there. If she would have listened, she'd still be alive. Well, the video fucking says otherwise. Today it's her. Tomorrow it's fucking you. Before the war reached her doorstep, Freddie Oversteegen lived in a country that believed rules mattered. The Netherlands had rules. Neutrality was one of them. For decades, Dutch politicians and citizens believed that staying out of Europe's wars was not cowardice, but wisdom. Trade flowed through Dutch ports. Banks stayed solvent. Life stayed orderly. The First World War had largely passed them by, and that absence of trauma bred confidence. Unfortunately, that confidence was misplaced. Across the border, Nazi Germany was not playing by old rules. It wasn't interested in borders, treaties, or neutrality. It was interested in speed, shock, and submission.
Über 13 Jahre hat das Schicksal den heutigen Machthabern für ihre Erprobung und Bewährung zugemessen. Das schärfste Urteil sprechen sie sich aber, indem sie durch die Art ihrer heutigen Propaganda das Versagen ihrer Leistungen selbst bekennen. Sie wollten eigentlich Deutschland für die Zukunft besser regieren als in der Vergangenheit.
On May 10, 1940, German forces invaded the Netherlands. The invasion was not a grinding campaign. It was a blitz. Paratroopers dropped into key cities. The message was not delivered through negotiation, but through destruction. And the bombing of Rotterdam was not militarily necessary. It was psychological. Entire blocks were erased. Fires burned uncontrollably. And the Dutch government understood the signal immediately. Surrender, or this happens everywhere. 5 days later, the Netherlands capitulated. The Queen fled. The government fled. However, the country remained intact. But that was only on the surface. Underneath, it was a hollowed-out shell. Because what followed was not chaos. It was administration. They arrived with paperwork. Civil servants were kept in place. Police continued to police. Trains continued to run. Because the occupiers understood something crucial. A population that believes life is continuing normally is easier to manage than one that knows it is enslaved. At first, the changes were subtle. Identity cards became mandatory. Jewish citizens were cataloged, and businesses were monitored, not seized. Each step was incremental. Each step was framed as temporary, and each step tested the same question. How much will people tolerate if the alternative feels worse? Freddie Oversteegen did not grow up sheltered by comfort or ideology. She was born in 1925 in Haarlem, in the Netherlands, not New York. She was born into poverty that predated the occupation. Her family struggled before the Nazis ever arrived. And that struggle shaped her worldview. When survival is already fragile, injustice is not theoretical. Her mother was politically conscious, openly socialist, and openly hostile to fascism. These beliefs shape behavior. When Jewish refugees began knocking on doors before the invasion, Freddie's family hid them. Not heroically, practically. They knew what fascism meant. They knew what silence enabled. This is important because Freddie did not become radicalized by war propaganda or sudden outrage. She was already living inside a moral framework that treated inaction as complicity. When the occupation hardened, Freddie was still a teenager. She watched classmates disappear, teachers vanish, shops close selectively, signs appear on doors, forbidden for Jews, pools, parks, trains. This is how genocide begins in real life, not with camps, but with inconvenience. By 1941, Jews were barred from most public life. By 1942, deportations began in earnest. People told themselves stories. They always do. They're being relocated. They'll come back. It's not me. It's not our business. But the trains told a different story. Freddie decided to join the resistance. She started off by carrying messages, escorting people, acting as a courier because no one ever suspected a teenage girl. The resistance didn't recruit warriors. It recruited invisibility. The Dutch resistance was not a single movement. It was a patchwork of cells, each operating semi-independently, because centralized command was a liability. Informants were everywhere. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Money talked. At first, resistance meant information, illegal newspapers, spreading truth in a society being smothered by propaganda. Then it meant logistics. Hiding people required food. Food required ration cards. Ration cards required theft or forgery. Forgery requires access, and access requires trust. Trust became the most dangerous currency in the country. Freddie and her sister Truus Oversteegen were trusted, and soon the work escalated. Sabotaging the rail lines became necessary because deportation schedules depended on infrastructure. Sometimes hours mattered. But sabotage attracted retaliation. The Nazis responded to resistance with collective punishment. 10 civilians executed for one attack. Entire neighborhoods liquidated. This forced the resistance into darker calculations. If reprisals were inevitable, then actions had to justify the cost. And this is how assassinations entered the equation. The decision to assassinate was logistical. Certain officers coordinated deportations, certain collaborators identified Jews, and certain men assisted the Germans. These men became targets. But targeting them required proximity, and proximity required deception. This is where Freddie's role changed forever. She and Truus were asked to approach targets socially, flirt with them, talk to them, create comfort, then isolate them. The killing itself was fast. There was no speech, no confrontation. Freddie later said she didn't feel hatred. And that statement unsettles people, because hatred feels like justification. Hatred feels human. What she felt was a necessity. She was still a fucking child. In 1943, Hannie Schaft joined their operations. Hannie was older, educated, politically driven. She understood the law well enough to know it had already failed. And together, they became deeply embedded in high-risk operations. Sabotage intensified, and so did German counterintelligence. The Zicker Heitsdienst hunted resistance cells aggressively. Torture was systematic. Executions were public. Safe houses were burned down. The network started to collapse. Every arrest risked exposing dozens of others. And Hannie was captured in 1945. She was executed weeks before liberation. Her death was not symbolic at the time. It was simply another loss in a war, already overflowing with them. And liberation arrived in May 1945. Flags appeared overnight. Crowds gathered. Collaborators were dragged into the streets and humiliated. The country rushed to define heroes and villains. But narratives are selective. Men with guns were easy to honor. Women who killed were not. Teenage girls who used deception as a weapon were deeply uncomfortable. And Freddie, she didn't celebrate. She survived. But her survival did not mean relief. Trauma shows itself in many ways. She lived with depression and psychological scars for the rest of her life. She rarely spoke publicly. She did not ask to be remembered. She lived until 2018, finally receiving recognition late in life. But recognition did not undo what was taken from her. Freddie Oversteegen is not important because she was brave. She is important because she reveals what occupation does to ordinary people. Fascism does not only kill through violence. It kills by forcing impossible decisions early, brutally, and without consent. It turns children into tools, and then asks them to return to normal life afterward. This is not a story about heroism. It's a story about a systemic collapse and the moral wreckage left behind. And if that makes people uncomfortable, it should. Because the world keeps pretending this can't happen again. However, history would disagree. People like to talk about child soldiers as if they're a foreign problem. Something that happens somewhere else, somewhere poorer, somewhere uncivilized. But Freddie Oversteegen was a child soldier. She wasn't drugged. She wasn't brainwashed with chance. She didn't grow up in a jungle camp. She grew up in a quiet European town with bicycles, schools, and neighbors who waved hello, right up until they turned people in for a couple fucking guilders. What radicalized her wasn't ideology. It was watching adults fail. It was seeing systems collapse and realizing that morality means nothing when power goes unchecked. And that's the part we keep missing today. Child soldiers aren't created by evil children. They're created by broken environments, occupation, collapse, propaganda, and fear. When survival becomes the only incentive left, children don't need convincing. They adapt. We see it now, online, in failed states, in occupied territories. Freddie didn't become a weapon because she wanted to be one. She became one because the world around her made it necessary. And every time we pretend this only happens over there, we guarantee it'll happen here. History doesn't repeat because people forget facts. It repeats because people refuse to recognize patterns. And Freddie Oversteegen was one of them. All right, y'all. Be safe. And I would just like to close out the show with fuck ICE. And you might be like, well, come on, dude. They're just trying to do their job. I have no problem with people trying to do their job. You shouldn't be dying in custody. And if the whole goal is to get them out of the country, why are they sitting in holding cells? Put them on a bus and send them back to where they can go. Somewhere safe, obviously. But that's not your goal. Your goal is to lock them up, make their lives miserable, so they never come back? Who the fuck's gonna do the jobs? I know half the motherfuckers I know ain't about to work for no $14, $15 an hour. Hell, I haul fucking pigs. Don't nobody want to come wash our trailers for $15 an hour. Motherfuckers don't want to pay people a livable wage, so don't nobody want to do it. But you're kicking out everybody that wants to do it. I mean, come on now, make it make sense. Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening.